me, you got to play everybody a couple times at least, no matter what, regardless. So it just is what it is. When it happens is when it happens. We've got a tough schedule, but between 9 other teams that can say the same thing. So, it's a long trip. It's a cool trip. We just got some sunshine in a lot of these cities and some great cities, so it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's a work trip, so you want your guys to come out and be very focused and continue to get better.
This is Tumani Kamar, and it's time to open up the briefcase with Casey Holdahl.
Greetings, Blizzard fans, and welcome to The Briefcase, episode 88 of The Briefcase. I'm your host, Casey Holdahl, and that was Chauncey Billups discussing the Trailblazers' 15-day, 7-game road trip that they are just about at the end of. I'm recording this in Washington, D.C., after the Trailblazers bested the Wizards Friday night in our nation's capital. 1 game remaining versus the Celtics in Boston Sunday night before heading back to Portland. And Chauncey's exactly right. You got to play every team at least twice, a lot of teams 3 times, and some teams 4 times. You only can play the schedule that the NBA gives you, and while it is a bit odd to have such a long trip at the end of the season, you got to get them in somewhere. And as far as trips go, it's turned out to be an alright one for the Trailblazers. Granted, they haven't won as many games as they've lost on the trip, they weren't expected to do that, but they have comported themselves well for the most part. Other than the game in Miami, Trailblazers have played fairly well, including getting back-to-back victories versus the Hornets and the Wizards. We'll discuss the recent games on the road trip, Chauncey Billups being honored as a Hall of Famer, the end of the Rip City Remix's inaugural season, how the Blazers have done versus the spread on this road trip, and hear from Deandre Ayton on this edition of The Briefcase. With just a little more than a week left in the 2023-24 season, the Blazers are currently 21-56 and 10-29 on the road after going 2-1 in their last 3 games. So let's go ahead and just run those down. On Monday, the Blazers lost 104-103 to the Magic. They were down as many as 15 points, rallied in the second half. The Blazers had a chance to win it on Deandre Ayton 12-footer, couldn't get it to go down. Scoot Henderson drives into the lane, gets fouled, doesn't get the foul call. The 2-minute report after the fact says he was fouled, which is something everybody knew already anyways. He's able to finally get the ball out to Deandre Ayton, who has a very clean look. Granted, it wasn't the play that they were running, but after the game, talking to Chauncey Billups, he basically said, the shot that we ended up getting was better than any shot that I could have drawn up, so you live with it. You end up losing by 1 point to a Magic team that also recently lost to the Hornets, perhaps because the Trailblazers softened up the Hornets by beating them on Wednesday night, 89-86. The Blazers led in that game by as many as 11 points. Jabari Walker, an absolute beast on the boards, grabbing a career-high 22 rebounds and making 2 free throws with 1.1 seconds to play to win the game. It was kind of interesting. The last time that the Blazers won a road game prior to the game versus the Hornets in Charlotte was in Memphis. Jabari Walker also stepped up to the line with 1.1 seconds left, hit 2 free throws to send that game to overtime, where Portland would eventually win. So pretty coincidental that in both of those games, late in the game, Jabari Walker, a second-year guy, hitting 2 free throws with the exact same amount of time on the clock to send one game to overtime and the other game to the victory. I don't really think that means anything. I just always think those things are kind of interesting. Davis Bertans did get a very good look at 3, though granted, Bertans is more of a set shooter, taking a lot more on-the-move 3-point shots with the Hornets. I don't think it's especially good for his game. That didn't end up going down. Blazers end up winning that game by 3. 24 points, 16 rebounds from Deandre Ayton, who has been absolutely dominating as of late, as he did also Friday night in Washington, which we'll talk about here in a moment. 14 points, and as I mentioned, a career-high 22 rebounds for Jabari Walker. It was kind of interesting. He had 23 rebounds on the official box score when the game ended. By the time I got back to the locker room to talk to Jabari, they had taken a rebound away from him. It was still a career high for Jabari, but players pay attention to that stuff. Jabari wanted to know why they took away that rebound. I don't have an answer for you, Jabari, but 22 rebounds is still pretty dang good nonetheless. Also, Scoot Henderson on this road trip, having a very nice run, 22 points on 9 of 16 shooting from the field, 10 assists for Scoot in that game in Charlotte versus the Hornets and versus Brandon Miller, the player taken ahead of Scoot in the 2023 NBA draft. Scoot was asked a little bit about whether or not that gave him a little more juice, and he didn't exactly deny it, but didn't exactly admit it either. Either way, Scoot on a very good run right now, finishing his rookie season off with some momentum. Hopefully he's able to continue doing that as the Blazers go into their last week of the season and going into a very important offseason for Scoot Henderson. And then in the 6th of 7 games, the Blazers besting the Wizards 108-102 Friday night. Blazers led for much of that game, gets close at the end. The Blazers end up making the plays they have to in order to cement that game, including Scoot Henderson getting an and one, making the bucket and the free throw to secure the victory. Scoot did miss 2 free throws late versus the Hornets in Charlotte, so we got to make up for that. And also, when he drove in Orlando, got caught in the paint, wasn't able to get a shot up. He was able to do that this time versus the Wizards. So nice little bounce back for Scoot Henderson in that game as well. Deandre Ayton, as I said, completely dominating right now. 32 points on 13 of 25 shooting to go with 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and 2 steals in just over 40 minutes. Deandre Ayton playing 40 minutes a game, despite the fact the Blazers well out of the playoff race, playing with a bunch of young players. I think it says a whole lot about Deandre Ayton and his desire to be a part of this team, to be a building block of this team. The fact that he's not only continuing to play, but playing as many minutes as he is and playing as hard as he is on a night in, night out basis. You also had Dominayton, who's been sick, getting 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists. Another great game for Dominayton. I posed this question during the Wizards game. Is Jordan Poole better than Dominayton? Jordan Poole, I believe, making somewhere around $20-25 million a season. Dominayton is making, I think, around the veterans minimum, and he has a team option next year. I don't know that necessarily you would prefer to have Jordan Poole, even at the same money, over Dominayton at this point in time in their careers. I don't think I would. You also had 19 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds for Scoot. Once again, a very nice game for Scoot. Doing it with a pretty good percentage as well. 8 of 14 for Scoot Henderson for those 19 points. Starting to shape up a bit on the offensive end for Scoot. And then another nice game for Jabari Walker as well, who has entered the starting lineup, and I'm guessing it's going to remain there with Toumani Camara out for the season with that rib injury that also nicked his kidney. We discussed that just momentarily on the last edition of the Briefcase. I had a feeling that Tu was going to be out for a while. Didn't know it for sure at the time. Sure enough, almost exactly after I post the podcast, team announces Toumani done for the season. We'll catch up with you back in Portland, Toumani. But opening up those minutes for Jabari Walker, who has played very well on this road trip. As I mentioned, 11 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists for Jabari. Now, the Blazers will stay the night in Washington, D.C. on Friday before heading off to Boston on Saturday for the last game of the trip. Sunday night, 6 p.m. local start, 3 p.m. Portland start. Then we'll take a cross-country flight on Sunday night, something you love to do. The NBA couldn't figure out to give us a game in Minnesota, or maybe have us end the trip with the Rockets instead of starting the trip with the Rockets. No. Blazers got to do a completely cross-country flight in the middle of the night to get back, have Monday off before finishing out the season by hosting the Pelicans, Warriors, and Rockets at Moda Center. Fan appreciation nights for all those games. Going to have a lot of cool stuff. Head on out to Moda Center for those games. Tickets available. Super discounts on merch. You guys actually get the same discounts on merchandise next week at games as employees get. And season ticket holders actually get more of a discount than employees get next week. That alone, reason enough to come to the games. Not to mention, this young team starting to round into form a little bit as the season comes to a close. So the Celtics in Boston on Sunday, Pelicans, Warriors, Rockets next week, and then finishing off the season in Sacramento versus the Kings, 12:30 start time on April 14th. Well, I mentioned the Trailblazers will head off to Boston. One person who will not be on that flight is Chauncey Billups, who after the game versus the Wizards in Washington, D.C., boarded a flight to Phoenix to head over to be announced as one of the newest members of the Basketball Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Chauncey Billups, being honored for his 17-season career, 5-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, 2-time All-Defensive Team Player, 2004 Finals Most Valuable Player, 2008 Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award winner, 2009 Sportsmanship Award winner, and 2013 Twyman Stokes Teammate of the Year Award winner. That was the last time that Chauncey Billups had been to the Hall of Fame, was for the Twyman Stokes Teammate of the Year Award, which was the first time that was given out. Chauncey Billups was given that award. Now, joining the Hall of Fame as a player, congratulations to Chauncey Billups, a great honor. He's talked about it quite a bit on this trip. Hasn't officially been announced yet, but you know how things go. Everything leaks. Chauncey will still meet up with the team in Boston on Saturday night to then be back in time to have shoot-around on Sunday morning before facing the Celtics in the last game of a 7-game trip. I imagine Chauncey's going to be a bit tired. Hopefully he's able to get some sleep on the flight to Phoenix and the flight back from Phoenix, and then flying back from Boston to Portland. Just goes to show how honored he is by being named to the Hall of Fame. The fact that he's making 3 cross-country flights just to attend the honor that technically at this point everyone already knows he's being given. So that'll be announced at halftime of one of the NCAA men's tournament games Saturday night or afternoon in Phoenix. And on the other end of the basketball spectrum, the Rip City Remix's inaugural season ended last week with 4 straight losses to finish tied for 9th in the West with the Texas Legends and the South Bay Lakers with an 18-16 record in their first season up on the peninsula. But the success of the Remix is probably better indicated by the utility to the Trailblazers, and considering how useful the likes of Duop Reith, Justin Minaya, and Ashton Higgins have been this season, not to mention the growth of players like Chris Murray and Rion Repair, who played quite a bit with the Remix earlier in the season, you have to consider the first season of the Rip City Remix to be an unqualified success. It would have been nice for them to make the playoffs, but again, the point of the Remix is to make the Portland Trailblazers better, and I don't think there's any doubt that 1, having a place to send players to go build some confidence, and 2, having a place to find maybe where there's some players who are a bit undervalued who you could use for your team has been something that has been incredibly useful for the team this year, not to mention the growth of the staff as well. The team has talked a lot about using the Remix not only to develop players, but to develop coaches and staff for the Trailblazers as well. That has also happened. Congratulations to everyone with the Remix for 1, getting that thing stood up in such a quick fashion this season, and 2, having such a successful season in their first run. Shout out to everyone who attended games up at UP. Shout out to Hand Fruit Nation. A great start for the Rip City Remix. Great things to come in their second season, I'm sure. But until then, we'll see you at Summer League. It took a while to get the Remix, but we've already seen the benefits of having a G League team. All right, a quick check-in on the lottery odds. With 5 games to play, the Blazers still have the 5th worst record at 21-56, putting them 3 games behind the Toronto Raptors in the win column, and 2 games ahead of both the Charlotte Hornets and the San Antonio Spurs, who sit at 19-58. The Wizards at 15-63 and the Pistons at 13-64 are already squared away, and while conceivably the Raptors, the Blazers, the Hornets, and the Spurs could all still change spots, at this point in time, it seems fairly obvious at this point that the standings are pretty much not necessarily locked in, but pretty well solidified. Important to remember that the bottom 3 teams all have the same lottery odds, and then the teams above them, they get about 1.2 odds worse as they go further and further up the standings. If the Blazers had lost to the Hornets, at that point, it's very possible they could have ended up in the bottom 3, but by beating the Hornets, it seems fairly unlikely that the Hornets or the Spurs are going to win 2 more games, let alone 3 more games, in order to catch the Trailblazers in the standings. Not that they necessarily want to. In fact, they don't want to. Checking on the betting markets, at least while you still can, the Blazers have now covered in 3 straight games. They were 17-point underdogs to the Magic and lost by a single point. They were 1.5-point underdogs versus the Hornets and won by 3, and they were 3-point dogs to the Wizards and won by 6. So after failing to cover in the first 3 games of the trip, they've since covered in the last 3 games of the trip, with 1 more game left to play versus the Celtics. The fact that the spread was 17 versus the Magic, now granted that was coming off a 60-point loss to the Heat, really makes me curious what the spread is going to be versus the Boston Celtics, the best team in the NBA, at least from the records perspective. What I'm saying is if it was 17 versus the Magic, a team that's not nearly as good as the Celtics, I'm very curious what that line is going to be set at for that game on Sunday in Boston. And the Blazers are now 37, 39, and 1 versus the spread for the season, which ranks 18th. You don't set the spread as a team, so it's really not even a ranking. It's just how many games you've won versus the spread. The Magic, actually the best team versus the spread this season, even though they weren't able to cover more recently against your Portland Trailblazers. All right, before we wrap up, it's getting rather late here in Washington, D.C. Let's go ahead and hear from Deandre Ayton after Friday night's win versus the Wizards. Deandre talks about the victory, the road trip, the confidence, and the chemistry that he's building with Portland's guards, his first season in Portland, and why he goes out of his way to show love and respect to his young teammates. Deandre is always a fun guy to talk to. He can be a little bit out there sometimes, but he always gives you something truthful, which, as someone who's done this for a long time, is something you still appreciate. So let's go ahead and hear from Deandre Ayton after Friday night's win versus the Wizards. Deandre, first off, just your thoughts on the win tonight. It seemed like a real team effort.
Yes, it really was a team effort. Honestly, this road trip been pretty long. We've been sticking together, keeping the motto of togetherness, and just being with the young guys and learning more about them, finishing off strong with them in the season, and just knowing that we could still compete in this league and not really letting anything deflate us or the record deflate us. We're working on us.
34 points for you tonight, 13 rebounds, well, double-double. What kind of rhythm are you in right now? It seems like particularly your jumper right now is dialed in.
Pretty much figured it out. especially my guys knowing where I like the ball and things like that. Coaches making a huge emphasis on where I need to get the ball and, just Scoot and my rest of my point guards and my guards, doing there and listening and being coachable, attacking the paint and getting me open. Tonight I feel like I put up a lot of shots and, that was thanks to them just, creating for me.
You talk about the guard play as well. How is that chemistry with Scoot and with Delano forming?
It's fun, from where it started to where it is now. I'm just waiting for this season to, just to really get the new juices going off season. It's going to be scary what they work on this summer and, what they got to bring into the new season. But sure, we're seeing glimpses of it right now. Scoot's being extremely poised in certain situations of the game, no matter the momentum, and he's just really taking over. Tonight we've seen him do a huge play on just saying, hey, put the team on my back, and this is the play I believe in, and he did it, and he accomplished and took us home.
What do you think about the way you guys executed late in the game? Because that, for a young team, sometimes that is an issue. Tonight you guys were able to ride it out.
Most definitely, and it started with those passes, sharing the ball, and just playing defense. All that led in rhythm. Scoot and the rest of the guards just crashing, making second effort plays. Keeping the ball alive when we thought it was going to be turnovers and things like that. Getting extra possessions. Just by effort plays. And, in the fourth quarter, everything really started to slow down because those effort plays made the game, so relaxed. Getting all the jitters out your system. Coming out the half was pretty rough as well. We didn't have a good start out of the second half, and, Coach got on us, and that really woke us up. So we stayed neutral the whole night. And, that's really how we ended the game, slowly. And, that's what we wanted. We end the game on our terms, won it on our terms.
You mentioned being on the road trip, and it has been a long trip. And, particularly at the end of the season, you guys know you're not going to the playoffs. How hard is it to kind of keep that motivation, keep that energy up when you're on a trip this long? Yeah,
like I say, we're just working on us. We're not even really thinking about none of that stuff right now. We know what happened this year. The type of obstacles we went through, to not even have that opportunity or a chance. But at the same time, there's a lot of young dudes out here that got to know a lot of basketball, and we ain't got time for we got to make playoffs. No, we trying to work on us so there won't be no question next year on making the playoffs.
More broadly too, how would you say your first season has gone? I mean, not over just yet, but getting close. About a week left in the season.
I had a lot of fun. I feel like I'm a complete different player from where I was, especially when I was with the Suns. I feel like I'm a way more dominant player on both ends of the floor, more of a leader. I feel like these dudes really respect me, and I respect them the same way. And so does the staff and the coaching staff. I really feel like, I'm a part of this program, this part of this franchise, and, you guys trust me. So I really feel that, and I take that in the games with me. And that's really why, I've been playing the way I've been playing. I've had all of this. It's just, everything's enhanced mentally.
You mentioned your teammates, too, and you're a guy I've noticed you always put it back on your teammates and compliment them and talk about their growth. Can you talk about that and why that's important to you?
Mainly that's what things I was looking for when I was younger as a young player coming in. Just somebody to have their arms around me and just, be on me, good and bad. But, and that's what I'm filling in those blanks for them, just making sure I'm locked in and, just not focused on me and, everything got to be me. It's just really about them, and that's why I'm here, to really compliment Scoot and Shaden and just really lock in and, be a part of this puzzle that we're trying to create.
So there you go. Some interesting and honest stuff from Deandre Ayton. Deandre is one of those guys who he just says what he feels, and I think people take it the wrong way or try to construe it the wrong way to make him seem a certain way. I wish we'd just let the guy be who he is. Still a young man, still figuring out the world, very honest, very open about his feelings, his emotions. And that is something that I hope he doesn't lose. This business will take it out of you. It'll change you. It'll make you more guarded, but no one benefits from that. Keep being you, Deandre. And that's going to do it for this edition of The Briefcase. Thank you so much for joining me, as always, wrapping up this long 15-day trip in Boston on Sunday, back to Portland to basically wrap the season up. The one more game on the road, season finale versus the Kings. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much for joining me, as always. Like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check out Section 113. Check out the Blazers Balcony. Trailblazers.com/podcast for how you can subscribe. I'm Casey Holdahl. Go Blazers.